Hi, and welcome to Ivy English. I'm Angela.
And I'm Wesley.
Today is the 1st of February. Yay, new month, new opportunity, new us, right? We're on page 5 of the magazine. And to start off our month, we're doing an article called RFID and QR Code. And you know what? It's going to be nice to find out exactly what these things are because these are technologies that are happening everywhere in the world right now, and they impact us directly as individuals, so it's good to know the difference.
好，那我们的中文标题是哔一声扫一下科技带来的便利。好，那这个 RFID 就是无线射频辨识。好，那底下有告诉你这个就是它的原来的英文是 Radio Frequency Identification。好，那 QR Code 这很多人都很熟悉。好，那 QR 就是 Quick Response。好，所以这就是所谓的 QR Code。好，这就是我们的标题。
You know, the thing is, though, in English, we don't say quick response code either.
Oh.
Most people would have no idea what QR code stands for.
OK 啊，英文也没有人会说 quick response code 啊，那人家听不懂，他们也是直接讲说 QR code。
Okay, let's read the article. Advances in technology are making our lives easier all the time. Consider how simple it is to borrow a bike with a swipe of a card or visit a website by scanning an image. These actions are everyday occurrences for most of us, but do you know how they work? One type of technology simplifying our lives is radio frequency identification, or RFID. You might not be familiar with the term, but you have definitely used it if you have a card that you use for transit, whether on the metro or for city-shared bikes. Or perhaps you have a debit card that just requires you to wave it in front of a sensor to make a purchase. RFID technology works by transmitting payment or user details via a radio frequency. Of course, as with any new technology, people tend to have concerns regarding consumer protections. However, there is no need to worry. Your personal information is protected because the card needs to be close to, if not touching, the reader to work. Also, a one-time code is issued for each transaction, so potential scammers won't get full access to your details. Another common technology is the easily recognizable quick response or QR code. These square graphics comprised of blocks and lines can be scanned by a QR code reader, which is now an automatic built-in function on smartphones. The encoded data may contain links to websites, but can also direct your phone to a video or help you add a new contact on a messaging app. QR codes are especially good for getting information from companies or marketers to lots of people. All it takes is a quick scan of one little image. Okay, so advances in technology are making our lives easier all the time. When we say advances in technology, we mean that certain technologies have, newer and more complicated technologies have come out. And we also talk about, the systems that link them together. Because the QR code and RFID, yes, there's a base technology to them, but actually what it is a system that uses this technology to link things together. And it's the system that's the advance here, much more so than the actual technology, the actual physical item that we're talking about.
好，那所以其实所谓的 advances in technology 就是中文常讲的科技的进步。好，那它可能指的是某一项科技的进步，也可能是指科技它所带来的一些发展的成果所产生的一些 system 一些系统让你更方便的来使用。好，那所以这句话其实我觉得各位可以把这句话背起来，这句话非常好用你写很多作文都可以写这一句话而且整句背。Advances in technology are making our lives easier all the time.
It's practically a cliche to say this now.
Yeah,
but it's still a good sentence.
Yeah, 这其实已经是陈腔滥调了，但是你在写作文考试的时候呢，这种句子非常好用因为几乎什么东西都可以讲你就直接把这句直接套进来。好，所以呢，这个 making 它，但是要注意这个单复数，因为你如果单复数搞错的话，那句子就错了。那首先要注意那个 advances， 那个是复数，因为它进步不会只有一个进步，它是很多进步各种不同的进步。然后呢，用现在进行式最好 ，are making our lives easier 让我们的 这个生活更容易。好，因为它这个事情还没有结束，它正在发生，正在发展当中，所以是现在进行式。那还要注意 our lives， 那个 live 要是复数的，因为不是你的生活而已，是每一个人不同的，他的生活，你的生活，好，你我他的生活都改变了，所以又是一个复数的。然后 easier， 那最后 all the time， 所以整句把它背起来非常好用的。
Consider how simple it is to borrow a bike with the swipe of a card. So like in Taipei, our U-Bike system, you just have to own a card, a yo-yo card, and the yo-yo card gets you access to the subway, gets you access to U-Bikes. You can use it to pay at 7-Elevens and taxis. So just the swipe of a card, it's actually not a swipe. You got to hold it there on the machine for a second till it goes, yes. And then you can also visit a website by scanning an image.So the swipe of a card, that's an RFID. And scanning an image, that's a QR code.
好，所以看到他说 consider， 你就想一下 how simple it is to do something 啊。那这个 how simple it is to do something， 这是一个感叹句啊，那它不是个问句，所以那个 it is 不用倒装啊。所以 how simple it is， 那 it 就是指后面这个 to 所带来的这一大堆的片语，那就是 it 所指的事情。也就是说，你想一想底下这件事情有多么的容易啊？那什么事情呢？这里有两件事情，那这两件事情用的英文，各位也是把它背起来，非常好用啊。Borrow a bike with the swipe of a card， 就是用一张卡刷一下就可以借脚踏车，这个显然就是 U-Bike 啊。那这个 swipe 在这里呢，本来是刷的意思，那事实上也不是说真的刷啊，因为你其实这个卡去靠近它。那这个地方中文跟英文都一样，中文在这种时候虽然说不是真的刷，但是也可以说刷卡啊。那英文呢也是一样，它用 swipe。
Yeah. And then, so the difference between swipe is for a physical action. Whereas scanning for the QR code, scanning is literally looking in detail at every single point of the image in a quick way. Looking in detail in a quick way is scanning.
Yeah. 所以 scan 就是扫描，它是很快的把你的一些 detail 把它扫进去啊。所以我们要学的第二件事情，第二个用法就是Visit a website by scanning an image， 就是你可以透过扫描一个 image 一个图像，你就可以去 visit a website。所以这里这个很常见的 chunk 就是 visit a website。好，所以各位要注意，就是读英文的时候，其实在你理解的时候，你要把那个段落把它分清楚，一块一块分清楚。像这个地方 borrow a bike， 然后呢 with a swipe of a card， 然后后面呢是 visit a website， 你要把 visit a website 一起读。然后呢 by scanning an image， 那就又是一块就是扫描一个图像。
So these actions are everyday occurrences for most of us. If something is an everyday occurrence, it means it happens every day. Occur and happen are basically the same word. But we like to say everyday occurrences because if you wanted to use happen, you'd have to say everyday happenings, which is a little more awkward.So these actions are everyday occurrences for most of us, but do you know how they work? And here work is not like do work, but how do they do the thing?
How do they operate?
Operate, thank you.
好，所以呢这个地方讲到说 these actions 这些动作呢 are everyday occurrences， 就是每天会发生的事情。Everyday 在这里就是形容词，每天的。那 occurrences 就是会发生的事情。那同样它是可以数的，所以不会只发生一件事情，好几件事情，所以是 everyday occurrences。然后 for most of us， 这又是一个单元，一个意义单位。for most of us， 对我们大多数人来讲，这些事情都是每天都会发生的事情。但是 do you know how they work？ 但是你知道他们是怎么运作的吗？这个 work 可以翻译成为运作。
So one type of technology simplifying our lives is radio frequency identification.So the acronym for this is RFID. Technically, it should just be RFI because we usually just take the first letter of each word. But ID is such a common acronym for identification that it makes sense to say it. So it's radio frequency ID or RFID. But I think also if you asked the average person, they won't, first of all, know what RFID is. And second of all, they won't know that radio frequency identification is what it stands for.And then you'd be like, it's that little chip in your card that you swipe. They'd be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, 这个中文跟英文一样，也是一样哈。中文我想你跟他讲说无线射频辨识，大家都会觉得这什么东西啊哈。但是你讲就是你去刷的那他就知道了哈。那英文也是一样 好，大部分的人可能不知道什么叫 RFID 哈。好，那所以我们看到这个地方讲说 one type of technology 就有一种科技，那这种科技是 simplifying our lives 啊 ，simplify 就是使它变得简单啊，那这个 simplifying our lives 就修饰那个 technology， 所以有一种让我们生活更简单的一种科技呢，是这个无线射频辨识。
You might not be familiar with the term. I would like to say you would probably will not be familiar with the term. Might not means there's a small chance that you won't. Probably not is a large chance. However, you have definitely used it. Definitely means most likely or almost certainly. And if you have a card that you use for transit, transit is a word that means getting from point A to point B. So you could transit with a car, with a train, with a bike, with your two legs, walking on your hands if you wanted, but that'd be really slow. You could swim, and that would still be transiting. But anyways, you could use, if you have a card that you use for transit, for paying for public transportation is actually what that means. Whether on the metro, which is the underground or the subway or the elevated or the trains that run under the city or that run through the city. Or for, light rail is the word I was trying to look up. Light rail is the other word that you could use for metro. Or for city shared bikes, like U-bike.
好，所以 light rail 就是轻轨，好，我们讲轻轨的这个捷运，好 ，light 就是轻的 L-I-G-H-T， rail 就是 R-A-I-L， 好，所以他说 you might not 也许，好，他语气他就讲得很客气，也许你不是 be familiar with 就是熟悉，你也许不是很熟悉这个 term， 但是呢 you have definitely 就是你绝对你肯定一定怎么样 used it 你一定用过，好，所以Definitely 就是这个 without doubt 你一定用过。If you have a card， 你如果有一张卡，这个卡是怎么样 ？That you use， 你用这张卡 for transit 用来做交通运输。Transit 它的意思就是交通运输但是呢 transit 它也可以用来指 mass transit， 就是大众运输MASS， 或者是 public transit 这就是大众运输。所以这张卡你用来做大众运输之用 ，whether 不管你是怎么样大众运输呢，不管你是 on the metro 是坐这个捷运，还是 for city shared bikes， 还是那种城市共享的脚踏车，好像 U-bike。
So we've just given one example of where we use RFID cards, and now we're giving another example. Or perhaps you have a debit card. A debit card, or honestly a credit card, or almost any kind of payment card these days, that just requires you to wave it in front of a sensor to make a purchase. Again, the waving it is more kind of like holding it still in front of a sensor. So anyways, you do this to make a purchase. It's basically a cash payment chip.
好，所以呢，或者也许你有一张这个 debit card， 就是这个签账的信用卡或者签账金融卡了不一定是信用卡，它可以是信用卡，但是这个debit card 就是指签账的金融卡that just requires you 这张卡要求你它请你一定要干嘛 wave it 就晃一晃摇一摇其实就是你还是要放在它前面让它感应in front of a sensor 要放在一个感应器的前面这样子你才可以 to make a purchase 才能买东西或者购买某一种服务。
So far, this paragraph is like a textbook 5-part essay kind of paragraph. We have an introduction sentence, and then we have two examples of how this technology works. One is talking about transit, one is talking about payment, and now we have a kind of a summary sentence which says, RFID technology works by transmitting payment or user details via or through a radio frequency. So transmitting means sending. So we've just told you how it works with examples that you know, and then we're saying it more formally, what it's doing. So the technology works. The technology does its thing by sending information about money or about who the person is through a radio frequency from your chip to the machine that's scanning.
好，所以这个 RFID 好，这个 technology 这样的一种科技呢，works 就是它运作的方式是 by transmitting 就是传输或者是传送无线信号这样的这个它传送 payment 传送你的付款或者是 user details 或者你使用者的一些资讯 via 就是透过 by means of 透过一个 radio frequency 透过一个无线电频率。
So then our third paragraph is talking about a new topic, which is concerns that people have about new technology, which always happens when a new technology is introduced, first of all, and second of all is valid because not every technology is a good technology. So of course, as with any new technology, people tend to have concerns. If you tend to do something, it's like you're more likely to do it. Like you can say, when I'm driving, I tend to keep to the left on the lane because I know that motorcycles are going to be going constantly by me on the right. So I tend to leave more space in the right side of the lane. It's something I usually do. So people tend to have concerns. They usually have concerns about what? Regarding or about consumer protections. Because if your information is going to be in a little chip and it can broadcast it anywhere, maybe it can broadcast it to places where it shouldn't be. So how is that taken care of?
好，所以当然呢 as with any new technology 正如我们对所有的科技都一样。好，那怎么样一样呢？ People tend to 人们往往 tend to 可以翻成往往。那接下来这个 chunk 这个语块很好 have concerns regarding something。Have concerns regarding something 就是他会顾虑到，会对这件事情会有一点担忧。concern 在这里要加，记得要加 s。好，那关于什么他们会觉得担忧呢？ Consumer protections 就是消费者的保护，尤其是消费者个资的保护。
However, there is no need to worry. Wait, what? So, wait, we need to explain things, but we're starting off by telling us people not to worry and then explaining things. However, when I do an explanation like this, I prefer to be like, here's the reasons why, and then say not to worry. You know what I'm saying? It's just a personal preference. However, you can do it like this.
好，但是呢 there is no need to worry 就是不用担心然后他接下来会跟你讲为什么不用担心那当然另外一种方式就是你先讲为什么不用担心，然后最后再说不用担心，都可以。
So your personal information is protected. It's taken care of because, first of all, the card just can't radio out information. It can only reflect radio waves back to something with the information that's required. So it's not broadcasting information. And second of all, in order to reflect a radio wave back to a source with information, it has to be close to, if not even touching, the reader to work. So it can't be that far away or it's not readable.
好，所以你的 personal information 你的个资is protected 被保护的好好的，因为 the card 这张卡 needs to be close to 它必须要能够相当靠近能够靠近靠近什么呢？我们可以看到它靠近这个 to 的受词是那个 the reader so it needs to be close to the reader to work. Reader 在这里就是那个感应器它要离感应器够近才能够工作。好，然后它中间插入一个 if not touching， 中文可以翻译成就算不碰到。好 touching 就碰触到，它就算不去碰到这个 reader， 它也必须要是 be close to。换句话说，一定要靠得很近的意思。好，这个 if not 就是就算不或即使不的意思。
Okay, so that means that on a general level, your card isn't just releasing your information to the world. However, that doesn't really address the concerns that people really have, which is once your information is in the system, what happens to it? So this is more addressing the functionality of the card. Now, the second thing they want to tell us about here is that a one-time code is issued for each transaction. So if something is issued, it's given out. If you issue a code, it generally means, using language like issue a code, is that some authorizing body gives out officially labeled information. And so this transaction that you just did where you paid for using a U-bike, it got issued a code. It got labeled with a specific number. And this is so that potential scanners won't get full access to your details. So even if someone broke into that particular U-bike machine to find out who you were, they won't know because the system has used a code instead of putting your information straight into its system. To be honest, I don't understand how this works. Because if it's a code, how do I know that the code represents your information? Like, I'm not privy to their system, so I don't know.
Yeah, 好，所以这个到底是怎么运作的，这可能要真正的专家才能解释得很清楚但是在这里我们得到讯息其实已经够了，他就告诉你说 a one-time code 一个只能用一次的一个 编码is issued 被发送出来给你for each transaction 你每次的交易就有一个码，而且那个码只能用一次。好，那这样子的话呢 potential scammers potential 就是这个潜在的可能的 scammers 就是诈欺者，他们没有办法 get full access to to get access to 就是取得，那没有办法 get full access to 就他没有办法完全取得所以还是有点安全保护的，他没有办法完全取得你的 details 你的那个 personal information 的 details。
Okay, so now we're changing topics again. You know, recently some students asked me, when do you change paragraphs? When do you start a new paragraph? They're trying to figure out how to break up their stories. And the classic answer is when you have a new topic to talk about.
Yeah.
So you can see very clearly in this article how each paragraph is specifically about one idea. So go ahead.
Yeah. 所以这个很多人说我什么时候要另起一段呢？其实你要开始讲一个新的主题的时候，那就是另起一段的很好的机会。那这篇文章里面就可以看到它每一段其实就是一个主题那就是分段很好的方法。
So another common technology is the easily recognizable quick response code or QR code. It's easily recognizable because, you know, we never saw anything like this before. We had the barcode, but barcodes fundamentally don't look anything like a QR code.
好，所以呢，另外一个常见的科技就是这个 easily recognizable， 就是很容易被你认出来的，因为之前没有看过类似的东西那刚刚这个 Angela 老师讲说，这个 barcode 就是一般那种条码它看起来是一整条的，那跟这个 QR code 还是不一样所以这种东西很多人一看就认得了。
It really is a genius idea. I mean, even the barcode is a genius idea.
Yeah.
But the way the QR code works is the barcode has got a limited number of applications, and then all of the combinations are used up. Whereas QR codes, because they have an extra level of information, you can use, there's just so many more possible QR codes in the world that we won't use them up for probably a century.
Yeah, 所以 QR code 它里面的变化可以有很多。那 barcode 现在它能变的大概差不多已经变完了所以现在大家开始用的 QR code.
Yeah. So these square graphics comprised of blocks and lines can be scanned by a QR code reader. Comprised of means made up of, but comprised of is specifically for pieces making up a thing. So it composed of, you can talk about the material or you can talk about chemicals, but comprised of is when you take things that already exist and combine them together into something else. So these square blocks and lines are put together in a QR code. And now it is and then they can be scanned, it can be read by a QR code reader, which before was something you had to specially install in your smartphone, but now it's an automatic built-in function on smartphones. It's kind of cool. It's like so much more convenient.
Yeah, 好，所以呢，它这些 square 方形的 graphics 就是图形，好，通常是用复数。Comprised of 就是由什么时候做组成，它通常就是由你可以看得出来一块一块一个部分一个部分把它组起来，那个 comprised of。如果是 composed of 的话，它可能就是它可以指一块块组起来，可以指成分就你不一定看得出来它的成分是什么，但是它们是由这些成分所组成的这两个字差别在这里。所以这个 QR code 你可以怎么样，它是由这个 blocks 一些方块一些线条所组成的。那它怎么样呢？这个 comprised of blocks and lines 是修饰那个 graphics 那真正的动词在 can be scanned， 它可以被扫描，由一个的 QR code 的这个 reader 读取器来扫描。那 which is now， 那这个 QR code 的这个读取器呢，现在是个 automatic 是自动的，而且是 built in 内建的一个 function 一个功能on smartphones 在手机上面，智慧型手机现在这是个内建的功能。
The encoded data. Encoded just means put into a code, represented by a code. So the code is the blocks and lines. So this encoded data may contain links to websites. So it may take you to a website, but it can also direct your phone or take your phone to a video. Or it can directly help you add a new contact on a messaging app. So there's a lot of functions that can be attached to a QR code. Which is why you shouldn't just sort of willy-nilly scan QR codes, actually. Because they can just...
Yeah, do a lot of things.
Once you've given them permission, they can do a lot of things in your phone.
Yeah, 好，所以 QR code 很方便，但不要乱扫，因为它其实 QR code 可以做很多事情 所以他这里讲到说 encoded 就经过编码的这个 data 啊，可能会包含什么呢？ links to websites 可能会让你连接到，就包括连接一些其他网站的一些连接 links 啊。But can also 它也可以 direct your phone 可以把你的电话导向 direct 把它导向一个 video 一个影片，或者是 help you add a new contact 好，或者帮你加上一个新的这个联络人好，就可以联络的对象 on a messaging app 在一个这个讯息软体上面好，例如说 Line 好，那它就 QR code 就可以帮你加上一个联络人。
So QR codes are especially good for doing a thing. They're good for getting information from companies or marketers to lots of people, for getting information from A to B or getting something from A to B. So let's go back to what good for is. Good for and good at are very similar phrasal verbs, but good for is about a tool. A tool is good for doing something.And good at is about a person. A person is good at doing something. Now, if I said to somebody that they are good for doing something, I'm treating that person like a tool. So it can be done, but it's implied that they're a tool.
哦，好，所以呢，这个 good at 跟 to be good at 跟 to be good for 是不一样的哈。那 to be good for 通常是用于工具哈，所以这个工具 are good for something 啊，或者 is good for something。那讲人的话，通常讲 to be good at something 好，那当然你有的时候也可以用人，然后后面加 good for， 这个时候其实是你把这个人看成一种工具了。好，所以这里讲到说这 QR code 它特别适用于，它特别在这方面它特别功能强大，就是它可以把 getting information 把资讯呢 from companies or marketers 从公司或者这些行销的这个人员的上面把这个资讯呢把它get this information to lots of people 把它传给很多人。
All it takes is a quick scan of one little image.
好，那所需要的只是怎么样 a quick scan of 就是很快的扫描一下一个 little image 一个小小的这个一个图案。
Okay, so we have a couple of questions, 3 questions here for you. Number 1 of which is, which of the following is not true about RFID according to the passage?
好，所以根据本文，下列哪一个选项对于无线射频辨识的叙述是不正确的？
The answer is B. It is not usually used for marketing purposes because that's what QR codes are used for. RFID is for tracking people and money.
好，所以答案是 B， 它通常用于行销目的，这个是不正确的。
Number 2, what is the benefit of using a QR code according to the passage?
根据本文，使用二维条码有什么样的好处呢？
And the answer is C. Specific information can be sent to users. It is the most convenient thing about QR codes.
好，答案是 C， 特定的信息可以发送给使用者。
And number 3, which of the following facts are true for both RFID and QR codes?
以下哪些事实对于无线射频辨识和二维条码都适用呢？
The answer is B. People can make payments through RFID. That's true. People can get different information through QR codes. That's also true.
好，答案是 B， 因为人们可以透过无线射频辨识进行支付，那人们也可以透过二维条码获取不同的信息。
Well, that's all we have for you today, but please come again tomorrow for more Ivy English. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.